Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Hello MECA. As always, I'm your host, Dzulfadhli Lamin, reporting for duty. Now, as we are all aware, our PM announced a new order in his speech yesterday. Now, the order is called Conditional Movement Order, which is said to be effective this coming Monday, 4th May. In our special edition of Hello MECA today, we will discuss employers' issues on the newly introduced Conditional Movement Control Order. We hope that you will find this session to be engaging and informative. After the PM's speech yesterday, MECA also requested our viewers and members to drop your questions that you might have pertaining to this new order in our comment section in our FB page. We hope that we could answer and discuss all of the questions posted within this session. However, we also would want to remind everyone that we will filter the questions because some of the question shares the same answers. So be in mind that if you have more questions, just drop in our comment section as we go on live today. Now, joining me today, I have an industrial lawyer from Daman Sivalingam and Partners, Mr. Daman himself.
Hey, hi, Zul. Nice to be back.
Great to see you again. Thank you for being with us on a very short notice.
Most welcome.
Together joining us is the Chief Operating Officer and Senior Consultant, Mr. Victor Gunn. Hello, Victor. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, hello everyone.
Hi, Victor. Sorry to have you here on a Saturday, but thank you very
No
much.
worries.
We appreciate it. And lastly, we have our legal consultant, Miss Cassandra Pius.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here, Zul.
Hey, Cass. Good to have you here. Right. So as I was mentioning to our viewers today, the new order that was announced by our PM has caused tremendous, I wouldn't say outrage, I would say tremendous questions coming from employers. They are now concerned about the operations and their business procedures. Now, straight to the point, can I ask Ms. Cassandra, what does this new order mean to employers?
Okay. So basically, what it means now is that most companies in nearly all industries are now allowed to operate. But of course, this is under following strict standard operating procedures. And there are, of course, some activities that can't be carried out during this time, which are prohibited. So industries like those involving those in barbershops, hair salons, they are not allowed to operate. But normal manufacturing and other kinds of services, those are allowed to operate now at 100% capacity.
So to compare with the previous MCO order, now the government has allowed more industries and sectors to operate.
Yes, they've basically opened the floor to everyone to operate. But of course, there are still those activities which are prohibited. So that must be kept in mind due to the fact that we are still within the MCO period. It still goes on, but now they are just letting the reins loosen a bit.
I see. So for those that are allowed to work, do they still need MITI approval?
No, you don't need MITI approval anymore. All you need to do is you need to make basically an ICRA or a declaration with MITI. Okay, this will be under the notification page of MITI. Right now, it's already open. They've basically asked people to go and register. We're not sure if this is the actual page that will be used moving forward, but from the 4th to the 12th onwards, employers will be able to make the declaration. So there's no need to rush right now straight to the page to make the declaration. Don't worry about it. You have a time frame from the 4th to the 12th to do it.
Oh, okay. So if come Monday, I have not declared anything, can my employees go to work?
Yes, they can still go ahead and work as per normal.
Okay. All right. So it's not really an approval.
No, not at all.
Zul, if I may add, Zul, if you look at I think it's very, very important for every employer to look at the information that's been put out, because there are various SOPs, as we'll come to in a while. There are various SOPs that differ from one industry to another, and sort of to add on to what Cassandra was saying, what the Prime Minister's announcement yesterday effectively states is that everybody can work, except, as she said rightly, notice the words she used, right? What is not allowed is not industries, it's activities,
Mm,
right? So these activities, whatever activities that have been stipulated as not being able to be undertaken, and I think there are 23 of them that are listed. These types of activities, any company, regardless of any industry, cannot be involved in these type of activities. And I also like
mm,
to stress one point. You see on that list, they have, for example, you can't have training activity that's not allowed is mass gathering for training. That would mean that activity is not allowed, but the training company, they may be able to go back to work. I mean, they can go back to work. What they can't do is operate that activity.
okay, that makes sense. So, meaning to say that companies are allowed to operate as long as they do not continue the business that has been prohibited by the government.
The activity, yes.
Activities. Okay, right. Okay, that's very direct.
Zul, also one
Yeah.
other point that I would like to add as the introduction to this session. I think as we are speaking, right, there are many things happening out there. I heard that not too long ago there was an announcement on Astro Awani. I wasn't following that announcement. I also received not too long ago a petition that's signed by many Malaysians on whether the government can reconsider, this slight leaf in the MCO. So I think it's important for our viewers to understand that we've prepared the responses for today based on what was announced yesterday. Right, and there could be many things that will continue to develop along the way, and I guess the only way for us to get back to all the viewers is to constantly keep everyone posted, maybe through emails or through other methods where you all can be directly in touch with us.
Okay. Yeah, on that point, Victor, to our members out there, we are actively circulating updates with the new order that's coming in, and be sure to look into our website and into our members portal for you to check out all the new circulars. And to all the viewers, if you are non-members, this is a great time for you to join because we are offering a 14 days trial. So yeah, as we speak, if there are any updates, we will keep you posted. But until then, whatever that we discussed today, like our Mr. Victor has mentioned, it's based on yesterday's announcement. And I think it's important for companies to start making decisions coming Monday. Okay, moving forward. Cassandra, you mentioned just now that this new order is somewhat an extent of the previous order. So what are the standard operating procedures that company or employees need to know before they go to work?
Okay, so standard operating procedures, we have a few. Some of the main ones which we really need to remember is the fact that we need to ensure there's a continuous social distancing being done, even in offices. So having a 1 to 2 meter distance between employees is very important. The usage of face masks for both employers and also if you have visitors to your places of work. For example, if you're a restaurant or you're a boutique or you have people coming in, face masks are now a norm. You also need to ensure that your office is equipped with sanitizers. Further, that also you are doing temperature checks every day. You're recording your employees as they come in, recording their temperatures. Certain SOPs for different industries have even stated that any employees having a temperature of 37.5 and above degrees and above are not supposed to be allowed to come to work.
Okay, wow.
Doing this is to ensure that we don't get a second or a third or whichever number wave it is now, we want to prevent all that. So not only that, even some industries, what you need to have is now an emergency response team. So where this group team is prepared for any emergency, if somebody is tested, or if somebody is identified as being affected with the COVID virus, how are you going to respond to it? What are your sanitization that needs to be done? Things like
I see.
that. Also, another non-negotiable is making from including sanitizers. You also need to be able to sanitize common spaces. How many times this must be done? Again, it depends on your industry. It can be 2 times, it can be 3 times. It depends.
Zul, I want to build on something that Cassandra just said.
Okay.
I think that it's common that when we have been in this lockdown for so many days, there is this urge or this need or desire or motivation to run out there and do the things that we used to do. And I cannot over stress. She talked about second spike, third spike. I think everyone has read so much about
Yeah.
the Canada. So I think it was clear from the PM's speech yesterday. This is a calculated risk that we are taking. Okay, we need to balance between the economy and the health. So the hope from the government is, while we try to now redress the balance, all this while for the first 40 odd days we were going towards the health. So no economy is being hit because our focus on the health. Now we're trying to redress a bit more to the economy, but then he's trying to say, please use measures where you try to minimize your risk exposure to health, and that's why the SOPs become very important. And I think it's crucial for every employer to understand those SOPs that may apply to them, because there are some very specific SOPs. The one that Cassandra spoke about are the general ones that apply to everyone. And at the risk of repetition, you need to take temperatures for everyone. You need to keep their details. You need to give them masks, hand sanitizers. Yeah, and if in the event there is someone who shows signs of potentially being infected, then you need to immediately alert the ERT and take those steps that are appropriate. But again, the starting point is, let us not jump straight in and go back to how it was before. Social distancing, sorry, the other part that Cassandra talked about, whether it is even possible for us to go back as before if we don't have the minimum distance between employees. So a lot to think about, and I think the turnaround time is so fast, which is why you guys wanted to have this session today. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I couldn't agree more on that. I really do, because we have seen this term going around in social media, which is the new norm, the new normal. So in this new normal, health is a priority. So I'm pretty sure that the government will not allow people to simply walk freely into the offices. And these guidelines is a measure for employers to follow. So subject to the guidelines, I believe that it's important for employers to make sure that the employees are safe to go to work. I think that's I wouldn't go above and beyond the line, but it's more of a responsibility employer has towards the employees.
Zol, can I chip in here for a bit?
Yeah.
I think you've raised a very, very good point. You mentioned that we have SOPs. And if I can put it, SOPs are like your legal obligations. You must comply if you want to open, right? I feel that employers out there, you probably have to think about the social obligation and also your moral obligation, because these are your people, your employees. I'm pretty sure no employers out there would like to think that it's okay for your employees to contract the COVID-19 disease. I'm very sure that everybody would try their best to prevent and to take steps to ensure that everything will be okay within their workplace. So apart from the legal obligations, I would also encourage employers to consider these other best practices that the Prime Minister has also mentioned yesterday. And all this may be very new to you. Some people might even say that this is impossible. For example, in a manufacturing environment, people might say, no, I can't have people on staggered working days, staggered hours and all that. But hey, we have all gone through 40 over days of not working, and in my opinion, anything is possible now. Right. So I think some best practices that I would like to share with our audience today is, first and foremost, whether you can look into flexible working arrangements in terms of timing. And to do all this, I had a little thought about this last night, and I think it's very important for you to position, in my opinion, the core functions you have in the company to run the business. So what are your core functions and who must you meet every day? For some companies, this is just an example, guys. For some companies, you may think that I need maybe a few finance people. Then I need a few from sales and marketing. I need a few from the operations team. I need a few maybe from the engineering team. But I don't need all of them to be there at the same time. So can I do a half day? Can I do, like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of thing? And, with all of this, and that it allows you an opportunity, like our PM said yesterday, to speak up to your employees, to ask them if, you're having problems at home because your husband may be on another roster and you could be on another roster, and childcare might be an issue. So if you can get, you can get personal with your employees and customize all of these working arrangements, I think you are setting yourself up for a very, very good culture in the future. So that's as far as I can think of in terms of how you should engage. But some other examples I can give on what I could think of is, reducing your working days, like I mentioned just now, rotate it between a daily basis or a weekly basis. You can look into having core hours, and this is quite common in the larger companies, and having a bit of flexibility before and after, especially for those who are taking public transport to work. So if you can avoid the peak hours, I think, and focus on the core hours, I think that would be very, very helpful for employees. Right. So in short, what I've just summarized is from Cassandra's point earlier, legal obligation. My point, I said, apart from the legal obligation, I would urge all of you to also consider the best practice.
That's a great point. And that coming from our COO. So I believe Mr. Victor himself, throughout the years, he knows what's best, and his opinions might be among what is in the best practice. So nonetheless, I would like to add on to what Mr. Victor has said. I'm amazed so far with the adaptation of the companies in this MCO period. Most of them somehow has moved from being centralized to working from afar, namely to say working from home. So a lot of these practices could be a measurement or a consideration that employers can take in the event that it's hard for you to start operating in the near future. So to say, employers, be creative, but also be mindful of the safety of your employees. All right, to move on, I have this one concern regarding with employees uh, who are who are on unpaid leave until the 15th of May. However, since yesterday's announcements, the employers are asking them to come back. So I have two questions on that, and I would like to direct this to Mr. Darman, since we spoke on consent in the first session. Question number one: can the employers ask the employees to come back, and do employers need their consent again to come back? And question number two: let's say if the employers do ask the employees to come back, but employees refuse to come simply because they gave the consent not to be paid within that period. What do you think?
Great question, Zul. I would start with going back to the reason why the consent was asked for previously. So previously we talked about consent. Let's say consent has been obtained to be on unpaid leave until the 12th of May, right? Now 4th of May you can come back. So to me, the conditions that were prevailing at the point when the employer had a discussion with the employee to get the consent and to work on unpaid leave until May 12th has now changed, right? So to me, it gives an opportune time for us to reconsider that whole arrangement, because the need for that arrangement has now become no longer real, because from 4th we can go back to work.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't think you need consent to come back to work. because I would look at the previous initiative as an exception to the general rule, and the exception to the general rule only applies when employee and employer cannot work. Now that the restriction has been lifted, the general rule would come back and apply. So to me, it should be the general rule will override the need for consent, because the conditions prevailing at the time we spoke about the consent is no longer there. To your second question, which is a little bit more, I guess, contentious, perhaps. Uh, Starting point would be employer asks employee to come to work, employee refuses to work. I'm going to make the assumption of obviously here that the employer is complying with all the SOPs and all of that, right? So they are in full compliance with the SOPs, and employee says no. What do we do? I I think we need to apply some level of practicality and logic when we're dealing with these issues. What I would do is that I would speak up to the employee, speak out, reach out to the employee, and speak to the employee to understand what's the reason the person can't come to work. Now, there may be particular reasons which might be genuine reasons. For example, I'll give you a very genuine reason. Let's say the guy says, you know what, I think I may have been exposed to someone who carried COVID because I was in this vicinity yesterday or whatever. So there could be a variety of reasons. Another employee may say, I live in a house with my elderly parents as well as my elderly parents-in-law, and I've got a 3-month-old baby. I'm really afraid. My wife doesn't want me to go to work. So if you have those kind of issues, then you may have to revisit that arrangement. So what I would do is I'd have a sort of a rule that says, now that you can come to work on the basis that I'm complying with all the SOPs, you come to work, everything is back to usual. But if you can't come to work, it would be as if you are on some form of leave. If you have annual leave, allow them to apply it. If obviously if they're ill, they can go on medical leave. If they don't have annual leave and it's not a case of illness, then it becomes a question of unpaid leave. So the employee needs to understand that because of your personal circumstances, since you can't discharge your obligation to provide your services to me at the office, that means I don't have to perform my obligation to pay the salary. So that's what should happen, i.e., employee was asked to come to work but doesn't come to work. It's either annual leave or unpaid leave. There shouldn't be it shouldn't be a guarantee that you continue to get wages when you can't perform work in those conditions.
I see. I think in that sense, it's also fair for the employers, because if there are no work done from the employee, the wages may not be given on that day itself. Now, I would like to give a little shout out to our partners, which is Elabram Systems. Okay, let me just share out this page. Okay, our proud partner, Elabram System, is one of the best HR solutions provider in Asia Pacific. Now, they are offering a free trial of their state-of-the-art workforce management system until the 31st May 2020. Now, this excellent digital transformation system will enable you to record staff's attendance and clocking in hours where they work anytime and anywhere. So just to weigh in with what Mr. Daman has spoken earlier, for best practices, if you are unable to start operating at the soonest, you may consider alternatives such as using this kind of apps. And there are also other HR solutions provided by Elabrams. Kindly check them out. Right. Victor, I have one question pertaining to what we discussed earlier. What are the options available to the employees or the employers in regards to refusal to work? I mean, I wouldn't, like Mr. Daman say, it's unfair for you to treat it as, something that simply a disciplinary action, so to say. So you may want to treat it more fairly. So what's your take on that?
I think you need to look at this from a few perspectives. First and foremost, if we are talking about Monday, right? And if Monday employees are unable to come to work, how I would look at it is it fair for the employees? Is there a valid reason being given? Maybe an employee needs more time. But because Monday is the day that, assuming your company operates on Monday, and the employee says, I can't come on Monday, then I think it's fair for the employee to go on some form of leave. And in this instance, I would think the one that makes most sense would be annual leave. But I would also like to cover the point where an employee does not inform the employer that he can or cannot work and does not report to work on the day that he's scheduled to work. That's one example. Another example I feel that may be quite possible is the employees will refuse to come to work. So for those who have, the first one that I mentioned just now, so the first category is employees who cannot come to work is a valid reason. They apply for annual leave or unpaid leave. You approve that, so that's sorted. Employees, the second and third one, the employee who refused to come to work and the employee who did not inform at all, you might be thinking of, building up a case on misconduct. So previously, I also want to link this to the wage subsidy, guys. Just a little bit on the wage subsidy. This is not the main topic for today, but in the event, say for example, you treat somebody as absent without leave because this person is not coming to work on Monday, Tuesday, and has not informed you. So as a result of that, he's not being paid for certain days. Does that affect the wage subsidy? Because when you applied for the wage subsidy, they say that you cannot tolak the gaji of the employee, you cannot restructure the wage of the employee. What I need to tell our viewers is this is totally different. That penolakan gaji or unpaid leave that they were talking about in the past is not in relation to a matter of misconduct. No, as and when you establish absence without leave as a form of misconduct, and as a result of that, the employee does not receive pay for the day, you can proceed with that and it doesn't affect your wage subsidy application at all. Right, so I think those will be my points when it comes to absence. I do foresee a lot of absence, especially on the first few days. So what I would encourage people to do is to understand, or maybe within, say, today, tomorrow, or the first few days of work, come up with a policy. But I also think that people shouldn't rush to open their doors on Monday, like we discussed earlier. If you can tell all your employees that we're opening, let's say on Wednesday, you still have time between now and Tuesday to come up with a very concrete policy and how you treat issues like this, and basically just continue your work from home process. That's what I would suggest for now.
Okay, I think that's a very good suggestion and very practical for employers out there. It's such a shock for us to receive informations like yesterday. So we never know what's going to come yet tomorrow or come Monday. So let's just bear ourselves and prepare for the worst. Right, before I move on to the questions that we have from our viewers and our members, I would like to call on Mr. Da'aman to sum up.
Okay, Zul, I think what you said just now is the part that really shocked everyone, in the sense that I think it was very, very small percentage of people in the country thought that he's going to do this, right? I think everyone was in fact thinking there might be an extension till the end of May, right? So I guess, and I think the reason why you guys called me to come on this show today was to give more lead time for the employers. And maybe I'd like to, my thoughts about this based on what we spoke earlier. The first thing, probably most pressing, would be, can you come back to work? Yeah, so we've covered that with, as long as you're not involved in the activities which are not allowed, you're fine. Number two, if you have to come back to work, what are the SOPs? So we talked about the SOPs just now. I think Victor talked about best practices. There's a lot of flexibility, guys, right? One issue that maybe we didn't cover in a lot of detail would be, if you have your employees out of state, if they want to come back to work, they will need to be able to travel, and there are requirements. You need to give them a letter, and they can travel to work. So that's one issue you talk about. I think the big ticket item that Victor spoke about, which there's no one size fits all. All employers need to go back now and think, okay, what kind of workforce do I need? I think Victor talked about core rules. Employees got to think about what's the number of employees maximum I can have if I were to follow the SOPs, the social distancing, and so on. Right? Do you want to have flexi hours? Do you want to have, as PM said, selang seli, different days, shorter days for some people? You want to think about all of those things. The next important part I think we cannot overlook is the communication aspects. We need to communicate all of this to all the employees, so that either they come to work, don't come to work, some come to work, some don't come to work. So, there's a lot that needs to happen between now and sometime tomorrow, where you got to communicate. And the larger you are, You have to use technology. You got to cascade from top down. And I think the last part that Victor and even Cass spoke about, and you questioned about the what happens if people don't want to come in. So that's a little bit from Monday onwards, some problems that we foresee in the short term. I think that's how I would sum up. These are the three areas that employees probably need to know to come back to work on Monday.
Great. Great summary.
Zul,
Yeah.
Zul, I've been getting a lot of questions about, I think this is a major concern out there. So what if an employee comes to work and he gets the COVID-19, he contracts the disease, and then a lot of employees are really concerned about the cost aspect.
Yeah.
The employee has to, I think, why don't we let Cassandra share a little bit on this? I'm sure she has some thoughts on this.
Cassandra, what are your thoughts when it comes to employees getting COVID-19 because of coming to work?
Oh boy. Okay. So that is an issue which again the company will have to take a certain aspect of sense of responsibility. Yes, our people are going to government hospitals. The cost is being subsidized, hopefully, by the government to a most part. But then again, the companies also have to realize that now employees probably are also depending on your own medical insurance measures that you already have within the company. So that might be an aspect to think about. Not only that, other costing when it comes to, not like Victor said, those are if they have been tested positive. But what happens when you have people who are suspected? Because of the paranoia going on, that's another thing where employers have to think about, because your costs now includes having to equip an emergency response team, having to equip your company with enough things to do a sanitization for, to equip yourself to be how to direct your employees during an emergency, costing, all that now becomes very vital. So it's not just taking care of people who are positive. It's also all the other types of costing which the company has to take into account. So I would also say that if you want to open on Monday, say, are you prepared for this? Do you have all the necessary equipment to be able to sanitize your workplace first and not cause issues like suddenly people getting asthma, suddenly people getting sinus attacks because of the dust in the offices.
Okay, I think that's a very good point that Cassandra pointed out. It's important for employers to make sure that they are ready to start operating on Monday before they do ask employees to come back. And again, the last thing employers want to face are potential employees being contracted with COVID. We wouldn't want that, and for our own safeguard, we hope that if you are to start operating this coming Monday, follow the guidelines carefully and make sure that everything is safe before employees starts coming in. Right. We have a lot of questions coming from our viewers before our show comes on air, which is the pre-show questions posed on our FB page. We would like to answer those questions before we come to the questions being posed live right now. And to those who haven't posted or who have more questions, kindly put it on our FB page. And if you have people who might want to know or learn from our session, you can share our link after the session has ended from our FB page as well. Right. Okay, Victor, before we go on to the questions of the first question, can you also share to us the implication as what Cassandra has mentioned on the precautions that the employers have to take before asking employees to come to work?
Okay, thanks, Zola. I'll be more than happy to also take on the first question that was flashed on the screen just now. But anyway, I thought that what Cassandra has mentioned and what a lot of people would probably be interested to know is whether employees are required to go through the screening that was previously required by Perkeso before going to work. So let's say you want to open your office on Monday. Do they need to go through that screening first before going to the workplace? Now, in my opinion, there's been so many versions of announcement and documentations that's been issued by the government. It has caused a little bit of confusion, but let me tell you my reading of it, my take of it. And Mr. Daman, Cassandra, feel free to chip in, yeah, because I think this is an absolutely crucial point for all our viewers. From my perspective, the fact that the announcement made by the Prime Minister has almost overridden everything that has been said before. So the need to go for a screening at Pekeso is no longer required. The screening at the Pekeso clinics will no longer be required. So employees can now go back to work without that screening done as early as Monday morning. But what's required by the company is now in the new SOP. So what's required, as Cass has mentioned, would be you need to do your own screening. Your own screening would be your temperature check, making sure you have those records and all of that. So let me repeat, guys. My opinion, I feel that there is no longer a need for you to send for a test. There is only a need for you to have a screening upon the employee entering the workplace. And I hope that answers many, many questions. The other part that I think is also very relevant, I just want to add on one point, is if the employee is now going back to work, and let's just say 7 days down the road or 14 days down the road, the employee is now sick, or the employee is now advised to be quarantined, then how should you treat such quarantine? In my opinion, it is, of course, the employee must be placed on sick leave. But what if the employee has exhausted his or her sick leave entitlement? Will the employee now be placed on hospitalization leave when the employee is just under quarantine? I'm not going to talk about if the employee is found positive, because that one for sure is hospitalization leave. But if the employee is only in quarantine, my opinion would be the employee is ill enough to be deemed as hospitalized, and that is a provision under the Employment Act, and I feel that the employee can invoke the hospitalization leave if the employee is undergoing quarantine. So that's all from my end. I don't know if Mr. Daman or Cassandra would like to add on to what I've just mentioned.
I'm fully with you, Victor. I think we need to take the information that we've received consciously with sequence of time. Because if you look at the SOPs that have been put out by the various stakeholders, they are very detailed, and they do not refer to having to go for the COVID testing. So I think this announcement yesterday by the Prime Minister is the latest as it stands now. I would be surprised if there aren't going to be further tweaks as we move along. This is a moving space, guys. 3 days later, if there's a spike in numbers, this might be removed again. But I'm with Victor in terms of the logic that since the announcement was made yesterday with no reference to having to test employees, this has overtaken the need to comply with the previous measures.
Yeah.
I agree with that, boss. Basically, it really has changed, and things are changing, even sometimes by the hour as well. So the way the ministry is also looking at measures, looking moving forward, is also changing. So that must be taken into account. So constantly being updated is something which HR practitioners need to do. So going to main sources, that becomes quite vital.
Okay, just to sum up with what Victor, Mr. Daman, and Cass said, for our viewers out there, I think it's important to understand that this conditional new control movement order is somewhat more relaxed compared to the previous MCO. However, it does not mean that the MCO period is over. So the SOP and regulation needs to be followed. And for all the HR related issues, employment related issues within the company, it's still maintained as it was during the MCO, and try to be updated as and when any announcement has to be made. Now, to all our members, our circulars and our IR updates was released. Our IR update was released yesterday, and we will have more circulars coming on in the next in the next day. Tomorrow will be a new circular. So please stay tuned to your emails or to your member portal login. Now, we saw the first question just now. Let me pop it up again. Can companies in red zones operate too, or any MITI submission needed? Cassandra, I believe you answered this earlier.
Right now, there is no restriction on red zones. There is a restriction, though, on those who are part of the enhanced movement control order, but that is again uh, confined to only very certain areas. So for now, there's no information on that. Again, you do not need to get any permission for MITI to operate. You only need to comply and get and take the basically the aku janji. That is all you need to do.
Yeah. I think now it's substituted between approval with the aku janji, right? Aku
Yes.
janji is a must for all companies.
Mm.
Great. Next question. Hold on. Is it possible to address new employment matter whether we should start on 4th May or wait until after MCO is fully lifted, as no one will be training the new staff, as most will be on working from home still? Great question. Victor, what are your thoughts on this, since you are mostly on operations now?
Hang on, let me read the question again. Yeah. Oh, can we
sorry.
have the question?
Yeah.
I think to answer this question, because there will not be
People,
there will be still a lot of people working from home, right? So my opinion to this is there is no need to rush to open, because you can decide whether you can go full force with people working from home, and slowly get into the mode of opening the office, and that's when you can start to train your new staff. That's when you can start to engage everybody else. So there's nothing wrong, my opinion, to start, let's say, in a week's time, and during this week you take a lot of time to plan how do we want to kickstart our company when we get back in there. That would be how I would look at this kind of matters.
I think if I can add also, this is a great opportunity for companies to come up with more creative ideas with staff engagement with new employees. Like for instance, they can have more Zoom calls or training through videos. It's something that company can adapt. We have seen various apps coming along this MCO, multiple apps teaching people how to work from home, and they even have features that we never thought of before. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Hold on. This is from Maizato Akma. Is it true only minimum number staff can come to office is 10? Or how can we define the percentage of the total employee department?
Okay, like let me have a crack at that.
Yeah,
I think if you look at the SOPs actually state that 100% of people can work. But I want to sort of, again, don't forget, it's 100% provided you can comply with the SOPs, meaning to say social distancing, right? Every time I say social distancing, I have a challenge now. The one that comes to my mind is social justice, because of IRA. Anyway, so social distancing. So let me just say this: if you're an employer who crams employees into a small space, you got a small working space, and you can't comply with social distancing, even though the new, from the 4th of May you can work 100%, you will be in breach of the SOP. So therefore, as in that employer situation, they may be forced to enter into a different sort of a routine. And again, what Victor talked about, do you still need everybody to work from the office? That's one question we got to ask ourselves. We've got now 40 plus days of data. I think every employer has got sufficient data that some number or some percentage of employees can very efficiently work from home. So, but of course, if you've got a huge amount of space and you only have a few employees, then you can have 100%. So I guess the answer lies, legally you can go 100%, but you might be in breach of the SOP if you can't comply with social distancing, or if you can't do all of that. So there's nothing like before. Remember the previous case, they only said 50%. Now they're saying 100%. But you need to comply with the SOPs, and you need to think about that.
I think it's clear now that there's no limitations and there are no specific numbers, the number of staff. But then again, SOP must be complied with. Right. So I think that's clear. Move on to the next question. This is from Mazwin Mohammed. What is your opinion if we were to extend an employee probation period who ends during MCO? For example, a technician came on board 1st February on 3 months probation, but due to the extended MCO, the manager extends the confirmation due to not able to observe the technician performance. This is very quite clear. I would feel like I want to answer it. But then again, I'll pass this to Cass, if you don't mind.
All right. So again, it's no problem extending the employee's probation. The COVID the COVID situation is a legitimate reason for being able to extend it to ensure that, again, that the employee is being treated fairly. So if you now say you can't observe their performance now, extending it is the logical thing to do to ensure that the employee is sufficiently observed in the coming months.
I
But
agree
again,
with
if the employee can work from home and you're still be able to do virtual virtual performance reviews, that's fine too, as long as the employee is being treated fairly.
great answer. Miss
So
Madhu,
let me just give my views very
yeah.
very quickly. I'll just put this very casually lah. Think about it, guys. Why do we have, in the first place, why do we have probation? We have probation to assess, right? And if during this period we cannot assess, then what do we have to do naturally? We'll have to extend for a reasonable period so that we can assess further. So in my opinion, this is perfectly fine. But thanks for the question. Finally, we don't get a question as if we are a government agency.
Yes, thank you very much, Victor. And I couldn't agree more with Mr. Victor and Ms. Cassandra. Put yourself in the position of being assessed. You would want to perform at your level best, and in order for you to do so, you have to be given the chance to perform. So if you're unable to come to the office, like in your case, a technician, Ms. Mazwin, I think extending is more logical. Now let's move on to the next question. This is from Mabel Lee. Do we need letters for staff to travel interstate to go back to work from this weekend onwards?
Okay, I think I will take that.
Okay.
So you're aware, when we were discussing this, we are taking information from yesterday. So from yesterday, part of the information was, as long as the staff have letters from the company requiring them to go back to work, that will be allowed. Just now, just a couple of minutes before we started, we got information that what is happening is PDRM will be putting out their own press statement, and they will be scheduling departures from different locations. So as such, this is still an ongoing matter. I would say best practice right now is to give a call to the local police stations to find out further information.
If I may just add on that, Ms. Mabel, it's best also for your employees to have letters from the company about them going to work. The reason being, as we have highlighted before, MCO is not over yet. So, however, they are only giving leeway to workers. So, it's best to safeguard your employees by giving them a letter from your company. Okay, I think it's clear. Move on to the next question. This is from Ahmad Safwan. Can we take disciplinary action to those who are refusing to come to work?
Jeng, jeng, jeng. Okay, so let me have a crack at this, because I
Okay.
think this has got legal and non-legal aspects, right? And off the bat, obviously we can take disciplinary action, because now with the lifting of the restriction, the government has said, provided SOPs are followed, please come to work. So there's almost an endorsement, chopped by the government, you can go to work. And now the employee doesn't come to work. Starting point for me would be to understand why. Yeah. And if the employee has got a reason which is legitimate, like one of what we talked about earlier, he or she may have been exposed to COVID, or is having a fever, or is, they are living in an environment where they're aged people, very young children. And
Yeah.
if that reason is justified, I wouldn't jump into going into discipline action. Rather, I would treat that as, okay, I understand your situation, but since you can't work, this will be on unpaid leave or annual leave if you have annual leave. Yeah. But let's say you have a situation where the employee says, is being unreasonable about it, right? So the employee says, well, I'm not coming back to work because I think it's a risk, even though the government said whatever. And I've read in the FAQs before on Ministry of HR website, you have to pay me. All right. So I don't care. Now, in that instance, I think that's a bit, the employee is taken a position which is wrong in law. And in those circumstances where there is no justification for the employee not to comply with the instruction, I would take disciplinary action. But again, during this time, I would respect an employee's concern and fears, because let's not forget, COVID has killed many, still killing many, and will kill many more. So, we need to respect if that person has got a peculiar type of circumstance. The middle ground, in my opinion, would be, okay, fine, you won't get paid for that, but I won't take disciplinary action. But I would use it if the employee is being completely unreasonable.
I think that's perfectly clear for employers to practically approach those situations, because as we assume, it's a very quick stance taken by the government. So employers are having quick sessions and instructions to the employees to come to work. And if employees refuse, again, we will advise employers to take a very reasonable stance. Okay, moving on to the next question. This is from Das Pinair. So if an employee has 37.6 degrees from a temperature that is well above 37.5, Cass, we request the employee to go back to work. But how will this be treated? MCAL or unrecorded leave?
I would say it again. I told you 37.5. It depends on the specific, what you call it, the specific SOP. So right now, if 37.5 is your cutoff and 37.6, you either request the employee go to a clinic to get checked and get an MC. If you want to allow them to take annual leave, that's fine. Unrecorded leave also, again, it's at your discretion how you want to treat it. But like Victor has previously said, you should think about coming up with a policy that has already addresses all this. So from the get-go, everybody understands if this situation were to happen, what is the next step the company is taking. So this way we can sort of stop having any issues with employees contesting a decision by the company.
Great.
I do see this as becoming a norm, because somebody gets 37.6 at the gate, at the entrance of the office. Immediately you come up with SOP, that means tak boleh masuk. Now you have to go to the clinic. Of course, as a business owner or HR, you want to know what happens to this employee, right? So you'll most likely get the employee to contact you. This should be in your policy also, within, let's say, the next 2 hours. Then the employee contacts you and says, I've checked with the doctor. Doctor says, it's okay. Then your next question would be, Doctor bagi MC tak? If doctor bagi MC, clear cut, right? We all know what happens next. You treat that as sick leave. If they say, doctor tak bagi MC, then really that's the discretionary part. Whether you want to ask the employee to come back to work, which I think you shouldn't, or you ask the employee to say, go back to rest, we will treat this as unrecorded leave, or we can, treat this as annual leave.
Great point. Also, it's also be reasonable when you're checking the meter, because
you have to calibrate properly. The 0.1 makes a big difference in my opinion.
Maybe you need to have 2 or 3, and do a purata, average.
Oh wow, yeah.
And that person might be walking like 5 kilometers to come to work, right?
Yes.
That's very panas. All right. Let's go on to the next question. This is from Liana Izzat. We're in construction industry. What if after a few days we start operation at site, then one of the workers is found as positive COVID-19? Yet we didn't know either they are infected at the workplace or out of working hour. Do the costs still be borne by the employer? This is a very tricky question, but I think it's straightforward as well on how to treat them. Can I ask Victor to explain this?
Okay. I think first and foremost, when they say that the cost of the employee is to be borne by the employer, the cost of medical fees is to be borne by the employer, it doesn't actually tell you the source of where the employee contracted the disease. It says, janji your employee kena, then you have to bayar. That's where that's how the SOP has been drafted. So I think that answers one part of the question. It doesn't matter whether it's within the workplace or outside the workplace, the cost will still have to be borne by the employer. I think what will also happen, in my opinion, is once you notify your emergency response team, your emergency response team will then notify the government's emergency response team that somebody has contracted. So the whole sanitization process and all that will obviously happen within your site. And that may, in my opinion, involve further temperature checks or further tests or further screenings to be done on all the other employees who's present at site. Because remember, there is an obligation for you to keep the data and all of that. So there may be tracking involved. People may be checked. And all of this, in my opinion, may also disrupt operations for maybe 1-2 days. It may also be the case where if they find that 1 or 2 more employees in your workplace also suspected for COVID-19, your workplace may then be shut for a while. I remember Cass saying something like this earlier. Cass, maybe you want to elaborate what happens if they are found guilty and maybe a few more found guilty at site? Would there be,
Yeah.
something like a
So
PKP special or something of that sort?
so basically, if your employee is found to be testing positive for COVID-19, one of the immediate response is from which they've said is you'll probably be put under an enhanced movement control order. So everything will be locked down. So that is the main thing. And if you don't follow SOP, that is also something that will happen to you. And because a lot of standard operating procedures which they have put out there have said you cannot operate if you're in a enhanced movement control order zone.
It's very
So there
clear.
is one thing that must, yes, that's very clear, because we do not want a resurgence in numbers. So again, if your employees, you must also remind your employees that we are still under the movement control order. So their job is really to get up in the morning, get ready for work, go to work, come back to work, come back from work. That's it. You're not supposed to go, have lunch, have dinner everywhere. No, but your movements are still restricted a little. So anyway, there's also contract tracing being done. So hopefully the company itself, Liana, will be informed of where it actually happened or where's the likely place that is, suspected of
I see.
being the.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you very much, Cass. I think, Miss Liana, it's important for you to know the safety of your employees, and if there are any signs at all, kindly alert the ERT within your company or the ones provided by the government. Right, let's move on to the second question. This is from PC Lim. What if the company decide not to operate until 12 May? Can the company ask the company driver consent to deduct AL, unpaid leave, or half paid leave during 1 until 12 May? I think this question is of more of a stating with status quo. Can I ask Mr. Daman?
Yeah. Okay. So this is clearly a situation where comes back to the issue around consent we talked about.
Yeah.
So anytime there is consent of to a change to the terms and conditions with the agreement of the employee, you can always change the terms. Now, I think what may be a little bit more challenged now would be because the government has said you can work from the 4th of May. So it might be the case. Let's say had this been done last week, employer made the call that this is going to continue until the 12th of May, and so said, okay, unpaid leave or annual leave or whatever. And now on the 4th of May, government says can open, but the employer still feels I don't want to go back immediately. I want to do it on the 12th. So the situation is what happens in that case. To me, because the consent has already been obtained, you can proceed until the 12th of May. But I think a conversation or communication needs to take place. because the employee might be thinking at that time when I consented, I never thought the option of coming to work was possible. So a probable renegotiation should come in at this point. I also would like to add, just one bit about, let's say, because we can't, because of the social distancing rules, we can't bring all 100% back at the same time. So let's say we're going to be at any one point in time, people are going to be working 70% of their hours of work or days of work. So I've got lots of questions around. Can I then, since we're going to go on a rota basis, on a reduced number of days per week, can I have a reduced salary commensurate reduction in salary?
Mm.
On the assumption that working from home is not possible, and on the assumption that getting someone to come to work 5 days a week is not possible because you need to do the rotational shift, I would imagine, yes, that it is an ideal time for you to go in and negotiate, provided your financials are such. Your financials is you need to cut back on your manpower cost. Yes, again, go back, get consent.
I see. I think PC, if you want more uh, information regarding consent, Mr. Daman and myself in our first session discussed thoroughly about consent, how to get consent, communication and methods of consent, and why is it important to have such consent. You can view it on our FB page. It's our first ever video session. Right. Thank you, Mr. Daman. Moving on to the second question. We are receiving tremendous number of questions. We will answer questions that are related to employment issues. I see questions coming regarding MITI on where and how to apply. I believe that the social media press of the ministries themselves has given out the platforms for people to check out. So if you're our members, we share it through our Telegram. If you're not our members, you can join us now to get those information. Nonetheless, nonetheless it's much obvious that you can go to their ministry page themselves, and they have SOPs and guidelines to your question. Okay, next question would be from Siu Hun Chua. I noted what Mr. Daman Sivalingam said on the activities, not the industry. My question is, we are a safety training provider and we conduct mandatory training to oil and gas sector. In this regards, are we able to conduct safety training to the oil and gas crews from 4th May onwards, since there were requests made by our clients?
Okay, that's a good question. Let me just pull out. You see, in the 23 activities that were listed, and I've got that in front of me, they have number 13 says ceramah seminar khusus latihan secara bersemuka. So that is an activity which is not allowed. Let me say that again. Ceramah or seminar or khusus or latihan secara bersemuka. So if I were to use that, I believe that you can't be involved in these activities where it is face to face. I would
Mm,
urge training providers to think about ways to conduct this training, because obviously this is a very important aspect of training. For the oil and gas, and I know a lot about that industry. Safety is a complete non-negotiable. But because the activity of face-to-face training is specifically excluded as an activity that can be done, you need to now do it in different ways. So I would urge wherever possible that uh, virtual training platform is done, or you may have to do this where it's a one-to-one session, right? So you can't uh, put a lot of people in together. So that would be my suggestion.
okay, great. So I think it's clear that those activities that your business may operate in that are not allowed to work shall not maintain to proceed until the end of the MCO. I think that is quite clear. Okay, before we proceed further, I have to be honest with our viewers. The intention of this session was to be an hour session, but we have moved on to 1 hour and a half. I'm very thankful for Mr. Daman, Mr. Victor, and Ms. Cass staying on with us. I just want to know if the viewers would still want us to continue answering your question. Type in yes on our comment, because I don't want this to be a lengthy discussion. So if you are still interested for us to answer your question, just comment yes. I'll give you 20 seconds for you to type yes. In the meantime, I would like to highlight that MECA will give circular regarding the new MCO and the previous MCO. What are the differences, especially in the SOP? So, because I see a lot of questions on our FB comment regarding the differences. So stay tuned to your email. We'll be passing on the circulars tomorrow at the soonest. We try our best in the morning. So if you're interested to know, you can drop us your email at admin@meca.com.my. Okay, let me just check the number of yeses. Thank you very much, Mr. Daman. Thank you very much, Mr. Victor, Ms. Cass, for staying on. And I hope you can still stay on to entertain our viewers today.
I got to leave. I got a flight to catch. I'm going on holiday.
You wish. All right. Okay, there's a lot of yeses. Then I shall proceed to the next question then. Okay, this is from Eunice Chin. Is it legal that we ban the employees to go out for lunch in order to reduce the risk of social contact? This is a very good question because I see that our PM announced we can go to restaurants now, four at the table and so forth. So what can the employer say in this kind of situation? Can I ask Mr. Victor, because you're my COO, and if I want to go out lunch, I would want to know if you allow me so.
Okay. I seem to be getting all the difficult questions. I don't know how to answer this honestly, but I think I will spin this the other way around. I feel that, Eunice, if you are really concerned about employees having the risk of social contact and all that, and you don't want them to leave the premises, instead of telling your employees that we are prohibiting all of you from leaving the premises, maybe you can spin it such where from today onwards we will be providing you with free food. Make it sound a bit better. And as a result of that, you can tell the employees that the reason we are providing you with food, either it's free, either it's subsidized, is because we want you to be away from people. We want you to maintain social distancing, and we don't want you to even have the slightest chance of contracting this disease. I think that sounds way better than telling employees that we're going to ban you.
If I can just chime in, as Victor and Zul. See,
Yeah.
there is a small legal aspect as well. The Employment Act states you need to give at least a half an hour break after 5 continuous hours of working. And let's say we go with what I think Victor's idea is great. If you're going to provide meals, and they have their meal at the office, you might have a situation on hours of work, because, and I don't want to go into too much technicalities, but I suspect I already have. If the employee movement is restricted, that means they cannot do as they want during lunch hours. The lunch hour will be considered as part of their hours of work. So you got to think about that, and I'm just going to leave it there and let that brew for a bit.
I think that's a very good consideration. And employers may want to, like I always mention throughout the session, be wary of the safety of your employees. Nonetheless, it's your obligation to ensure everyone is safe and make sure you follow the SOPs as stated. Right. Let's move on to the next question. Oh, there's a lot of yeses. Right. Okay. This is from Lawrence Chia. If we ask employee to go to work at night shift due to social distancing, can employee refuse? Cassandra. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes.
Let me just try and I guess this is where the employer, in order to maintain the social distancing SOP, probably has spread his hours of work, and so some of the employees may now have to do work at a later hour. Now, can an employee refuse? Obviously, the employee can say, "Hey, I don't want to come to work," but I think what are the rights of the employer thereafter? Now, provided this is a reasonable step that the employer needs to take, and provided the way employees rotated to do the night shift, there is no victimization of one particular employee. And this is the best way for the employer to have as many people coming into work while maintaining the SOPs. In my opinion, that would be a reasonable initiative. And an employee who refuses to come to work, it falls back to the situation we spoke about earlier, which is, potentially that will be unpaid. If it continues, it could be a disciplinary action and so on. That's how I would look at it.
I see. I think the communication in that part must be very clear. I think
Yep.
the employer and employee must understand the situation and the adjustments needed in order for the business to continue. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence Chia, for the question. Let's move on to the second question. Okay. This is from Miss C. William. Can sanitization of office premise only be done by vendor and not just our internal cleaner? When
Okay.
this sounds like a business opportunity here.
This one, unfortunately, we really can't answer for you. This is under the scope of safety and health. They are the ones who are supposed to decide on this. Again, you are supposed to do sanitization 2 or 3 times a day. I don't want to go into technicalities, because if you go the route of looking through the Ministry of Health, you'll find that they even give you the percentage of the types of cleaners which must be used. So unless you can source it yourself, this again is at the discretion of the company. We really can't give you an answer for this.
I would just like to add one point. And this is sanitization as opposed to disinfection. If
Yes.
there is a positive case, then there is a disinfection where I think some level of chemicals and all of that. I don't think we can. The business owner can do it on their own, lah. But this, I think, like what Cassandra talked about before going back into the premises. Bear in mind, it has been a dust collection center for 40 plus days. So I think that might be something that we all employees need to think about as first order of business Monday 9 a.m.
Yeah. Don't
Okay.
forget the wildlife has also been able to run without.
Have you seen Sungai Melaka? I saw pictures of it being very clear.
So that was fake news. Don't forget about that.
Really. Okay, next question. This is from Christopher Chin. If the company progression is rather slow and business activities are very low, employers still decided to resume operations and ask staff to return to work. Can employee refuse and treat this as potential risk by attending to office unnecessarily? From the first look of this question, it seems like there are two different scope of answering to this. One is on the part of slow business and asking them to operate. Another part is on the refusal, as we discussed. Can I ask Mr. Victor to try this?
Okay. I feel that Christopher is not very happy he's being asked back to work. First and foremost, can anybody stop the company to resume operations? I don't think so. The company has the right to decide for themselves whether or not they want to start business, and it doesn't matter whether progression is slow or business activities are very low or production is very, very low. It's up to the company to decide. And in my opinion, it could also be the case where, because business activities are very low, the company might feel that it is now a crucial time to get everybody back so that we can get the productivity and the business activities high again. So there could be brainstorming exercises that could be taking place at the office, whatnot. So that's one aspect. Can an employee refuse and treat this as a potential risk by attending to office unnecessarily? We covered this point. If an employee doesn't want to work because the employee has got valid reasons. So let's just say, Christopher, maybe some people have got elderly parents at home, or maybe you've got newborns that you're really, really worried about. Then perhaps you can speak to your employee, apply for annual leave. And through that application, and once it is approved, I wouldn't put it as employee refusing to go back to work, but now the employee has been granted the permission through a leave application not to go back to work. I think that would be a better approach.
I think that is more fair approach as well. Right. Since we are nearing to 1 hour 45 minutes, I'll just take one more question for the panel to discuss, and I'll sum this session up. This is from Joe Ng. Can the employer deduct leave from an employee who can't return in time from his hometown? Since the MCO is not a holiday to begin with, and working from home is not possible. Very interesting question. It's a very practical one. Cassandra, would you like to try on this?
Okay. All right. So, yes, you can still, but I would say, depending on how you've already been treating it, you can either ask the employee to continue taking their annual leave or continue on unpaid leave until they're able to return back to work. Because again, it's really not their fault. Sometimes they can't return to work due to being stuck in the hometown. So some consideration must be given there. But nevertheless, the basic policies is to ensure that they either you ask them to apply for annual leave, you ask them to take unpaid leave. If you're kind enough to give them unrecorded paid leave, that is also at the discretion of the company.
If I may add there, Zul and Cassandra, I think what you talked about, that was the pivotal point there is, if the employer has provided the person with the letter to come back interstate, if the instruction to speak to the police, all of that is done by the employer, such that the employee should have no reason not to be able to travel back from hometown, then I believe it should be unpaid leave. Because the employee seems to, in my opinion, trying to take advantage of him being out of town, right? But for example, if we could not get the employee to travel out of town, let's say we gave the letter for whatever reason, he was stopped by the police and asked to go back, then I wouldn't put the blame on the employee. I think that's the pivotal point there.
Guys, let me also try to chip in on this. I'm going to try to chip in on a very pro-employer basis. Yeah, this is 100% pro-employer argument. In fact, when I read the question, Joe, let me possibly with the pro-employer spectacles, you should rephrase your question because it shouldn't sound like this. See, in a pro-employer argument, there is a difference between when an employee cannot come to work and when an employee can come to work. So come Monday, the employee can come to work. Previously, the employee cannot come to work. So on Monday, when this employee can come to work, that whole issue of deducting leave will no longer be applicable because it is the employee who should be applying for leave when the employee cannot come to work, instead of you going to the employee to say, can we deduct your leave? That only applies when an employee cannot work. Right? So when an employee can work, I think in short, what I'm trying to tell you is everything is back to normal. Employee don't want to come to work, they have to find for ways to reach out to you and to apply for their annual leave or whatever leave that they see fit.
That's an excellent perspective, yeah. Excellent perspective. I guess we're also caught up in this seeking consent. But this is a situation where the employee needs to seek consent because he's the one who can't come to work after instruction given by employer and endorsement given by government.
Yeah, great point. I think it's very important as well, like how Victor has mentioned it. You have to look at it on two different perspectives, so to say, and pick one which is the most fairest to you and also to the employee. Right, I think we have come to the end of our session. Just to sum up to our viewers, this special segment has been aired to answer concerns relating to HR issues with the newly announced Conditional Movement Order. As for those who have concerns, I see in the questions regarding consent, you can view our first video, which has been posted on our FB, where Mr. Daman and myself have discussed deeply about consent. And we have also discussed on retrenchment and various termination methods in our second video. So for those who need more information, you can view on our FB page. We will also come up with a new video this coming Tuesday. Be sure to tune in, as from this Tuesday we will discuss the issue of how to handle hard conversations. Now, as we have spoken before, all of this may look good in theory, but practical wise, how do we execute it? So I will have Rachel Tan and Amanda Low, both legal associates of Daman Sivayan Lingam and Partners, to discuss further on the conversations that needed to be done. Okay. As for those viewers who have questions we are unable to answer right now, we have seen that most of it shares the same answer. If you missed our answer, you can view our video again once we post it after this session ends. I think that will take about an hour, 2, or maybe more. But it will be as soon as possible. All right. Um, I would like to give many thanks to our panelists today, Mr. Daman Sivalingam, Mr. Victor Gan, and Ms. Cassandra. Thank you very much for staying on and answering all the concerns. I believe that everyone have learned a lot from this discussion today. And I hope that we'll see each other again in other sessions in the future. Again, thank you very much, viewers, and thank you very much, panelists. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.